All right, so bell ringer for today. I'll have this put up right now. So, who were the Tuskegee Airmen? What accomplishments did they have? How did these men face discrimination after the war's end? All right, you guys get working on that. That's pretty much the reading from yesterday, so I guess we don't really have to go over those questions. I'll just grade them for you. So. All right, so what do we have here? Who were the Tuskegee Airmen? Jeffrey, go ahead.
They were some of the first black fighter pilots to see combat in World War II.
Yeah, good job. So fighter pilots in World War II, African Americans, and how they were given the opportunity by FDR eventually, right? Did it happen right away? No. There was a lot of kickback on this idea just because of the times that, with the South and segregation and Jim Crow laws, even the President of the United States thought this would be a failure, and that trying to train these African American pilots, it would just take enormous amount of time, right? And that they didn't have the ability, the mental capacity to understand these new weapons and forms of technology like these airplanes. And obviously, really sad and false. Okay, we know the Tuskegee Airmen were very successful and accomplished a lot in the skies over Europe and these bombing runs in Germany. Okay, protecting these bombers. Okay, so Tuskegee Airmen proved through their training that they were very successful, right? And they obviously earn the respect of many people. Unfortunately, after the war's end, did they gain that respect much? No, Troy, what do you have for that? Yeah, right. Even after the accomplishments, even after the 1,500 successful missions, and it really just goes to show, after defeating Germany and really bombing these many industrial areas and these strategic bombing and their protection in the skies, the Red Tails, right? When they came home, they didn't receive that respect, and it's very unfortunate, and just showed the atmosphere in the United States still with racial tensions and discrimination amongst many of these men, even though they gave it all, right? They gave it their all. They fought very hard and were very accomplished in World War II for the Allied powers. Okay. All right. And like I mentioned yesterday, so in 2020, President Trump recognized Charles McGee, who was primary source in your guys' reading, and he recognized him and his accomplishments during World War II with the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen. I thought that was pretty cool, right? And the fact that he's still around today, and his story lives on, and it will never be forgotten. And I thought that was pretty neat in the State of the Union address last year. Okay, and Trump delivered. All right. Is there any question on the Tuskegee Airmen? You guys good with that? All right, so let's move to the reading. I want to go over that real quick, and then I want to get into the lesson. Interesting story. Okay, really, really cool story. And a local man, like I said. He's actually my history teacher's grandfather? Great uncle? One of the two. Relative. He's actually related to Mr. Dietrich. Yeah, Mr. Dietrich. So we get to talk to Mr. Dietrich about it. That'll be pretty cool. That'll be pretty cool. So he knows the story as well. And he has the book that was written about it. So I'm going to pull up this reading. We're going to go over it real quick to make sure everybody's all on the same page here. And we'll move on today with that cool story, the Russelsheim Death March. All right, so number one, in the quote stated at the beginning of the article, what does Colonel Charles McGee state first that the Tuskegee Airmen chose to represent? What does this tell about the character of the Tuskegee Airmen during the time of the 1940s when civil rights still was an issue in America? What do we have here? 40?
The Tuskegee story is an important civil rights story of the Americans who happen to be black in their service in their country, their family, and their friends. And this just shows that African Americans can fight for their country.
Yeah, good. So McGee thought, you know what, this is a chance, an opportunity to fight for his friends, his family, okay, obviously the African Americans in the United States, and try to maybe end some of these are the hardships of this group in the United States, especially in the South. And he wanted to show the country that he had given the opportunity, and his men had the ability to do and accomplish a lot of great things during World War II, and they did. Right? We know that. Right? And it was great because obviously the United States, still with all this discrimination of the Jim Crow laws in the South, they fought through it. Okay, they wanted to try to be successful and prevail. And we know the trainings that was given to these men was very brutal and hard. And in a way, many of these military officials wanted to try to make sure the Tuskegee Airmen failed, but they pushed past it. They pushed through it, and given the opportunity, these men did very, very amazing things, even with the atmosphere in America at that time. All right, two. What was the perception of many African Americans in the early 1900s when it came to physical and psychological combat? What study conducted in 1925 proved this study? What do you have here, Griffin, for two?
They didn't think that they were capable to perform well in combat and were incapable of flying. I didn't think the study part of the question.
All right, yeah. So the Army War College, they proved this study in 1925. Obviously false, but this was assuming that many African Americans didn't have the mental capacity to understand these new types of weaponry, these advancements in military technology with the airplanes and flying, and that this training, it would just be a waste of money and time and resources, but obviously proved that to be false, right? And that was the perception in the early 1900s. It was unfortunate, but the Tuskegee Airmen proved that wrong. It was an amazing story. All right, three. In 1939, what did the U.S. begin to establish and why? Where did they refuse to do this at and why? Three, go ahead, Troy.
They established flight schools and colleges so they could get more students in the Air Force, but they refused to put them in any black college.
Yeah, good job. So the United States government placing a lot of money and resources and training into many of these universities and colleges all throughout the United States. But they refused to do it at many of these African-American schools, maybe universities and institutes, because, again, they thought these African-Americans didn't have the ability to understand these new types of flying machines, right? And these new forms of technology. All right, four. What was the Tuskegee experiment? Who pushed for this experiment to happen? And where was the first historic African American flight school created and when? What do we have? Autumn for 4. Yeah, just wording it as an experiment is just really, I guess it's terrible to say, right? Okay, this is not an experiment. This is training. And again, this just kind of shows that the United States, many of the military officials, when they were trying to initiate this flight school, they thought this was going to be a failure from the beginning. And wording it as an experiment is obviously very, it's very, I guess you could say, a backhand comment in a way. And it just showed that they didn't think these African Americans had the ability to learn these techniques and these new forms of weaponry in World War II. Yeah, so it was created right around the start of the war, and this was in Tuskegee, Alabama. Okay, and the Tuskegee Institute was created early 1900s, late 1800s to try to prepare African Americans for the workplace. Now it's being transitioned to, training these pilots. Okay, good. All right, 5. Describe how challenging the Tuskegee program was for the members. Why do you think the program was so demanding on the pilots partaking in the program? Jeffrey, what do you have for 5?
It was meant to push them to a quick program because it was set up for them to fail, so that way then it would sort of end sort of debate.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so again, it was challenging for the members because many of the military officials wanted to try to make sure this ended quick and that they didn't have to fund, the United States didn't have to fund this program. And they didn't think this would actually go anywhere. They didn't think of the success and the accomplishments that these men would accomplish and be successful at, especially flying in the air, using these new types of airplanes, and really just striving for excellence. And that's what these Tuskegee Airmen did. But yeah, making them wake up at odd times throughout the night, really just pushing them through training exercises that were unnecessary and excessive, and making them do awkward things like eating their meals at a 90-degree slant. I just can't imagine that. Having them literally the plates here, they'd have them eat to the side where their legs are away and then have to eat across their body, which is really weird, but a lot of hazing going on there. 6, how were many of the African Americans hazed during the time? I already went through that. Okay, I already went through that. 7, how many Tuskegee Airmen were killed in combat? How many were POWs? Describe the success of the Airmen. What kind of accomplishments did they acquire? Griffin, do you have this one?
Yeah, I said 66 people were killed in combat, and 32 were shot down and sent to POW camps.
All right, yeah, so 66 you said? Yep, and then 32 POWs. All right, so it just shows that, yeah, many of these men risked everything fighting for the country, and even with the discrimination back home in the United States. Okay, but they're very accomplished. Flew over 1,500 missions, and targeted many cities and areas all throughout Germany. All right, so after the war, many Tuskegee Airmen were not respected or welcome in America due to segregation. In your opinion, how hard do you think it was to be a member of the flight group, being an African American and coming home, facing the issues of segregation? Darian, what do you have for 8?
It was a difficult program to go through for the Tuskegee Airmen. They were hazed and humiliated in the program. During their service, they were treated poorly by getting no state and constantly whipped. After they served, they faced segregation and earned no respect for fighting for their country, although they were very successful during the war.
Yeah. Even though after all their success and accomplishments and helping the Allied powers win this war, when they returned home, they didn't gain any type of respect. Right, segregation would still continue in the United States. This discrimination against African Americans, especially in the South, all throughout the United States as well. But it was just a sad, I guess you say, story. It's almost like a smack in the face to many of these men when they came home. It's like, wait a minute, I fought, risked everything on the line, okay, and really helped win this war, paving the way for the Allied powers, bombers, okay, to target many of these cities. And it was really unseen for a while, okay. But like I said, recognized just last year, okay, and we all know their success during World War II. All right, real quick, here are the terms for today. So Operation Gamora. Gamora, Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Boy. And then the Russelsheim Death March. There we go. So I'll show you a video after the lesson today about Operation Gamora and how this was devastating to Germany and their citizens. Obviously, the Allied powers, it was needed, but some of the saturation bombing, which we'll talk about today, caused a lot of issues. And many people say this was unethical and went against many of military rules, codes. All right, Operation Gamora. What do we have? Troy, what do you have, buddy?
The Allied bombing of Hamburg during World War II. There was numerous attacks on civilians and civic infrastructure.
Yeah, good job. Good job. So the RAF, the Royal Air Force, Great Britain's Air Force, they're going to be targeting many cities all throughout Germany. And Hamburg especially, which was a heavy industrialized area in Germany. And in a way, are they getting back at Germany? Oh, yeah, right? Do you guys remember what happened? What was Germany doing to Great Britain all throughout 1940, 1941, even up into 1942? Jeffrey?
Saturation bombing.
Yeah, saturation bombing, the Blitz, right? The Blitz. So this was a way for the RAF to get back at Germany. And there's going to be a lot of incendiary bombs being dropped onto Hamburg. And I'll show you some pictures of the devastation to it. And again, many people say that, you know what, the Allied powers, we were almost just the same as what Germany was doing over London with the saturation bombing. Okay, civilian targets, civilian people, they were caught in a crossfire. They're often, many of them were killed during these bombing runs. And it was really obviously sad. That's not the intention, but in warfare, I guess anything's game. Right. All right, Russelsheim Death March. What do we have? 40?
I don't know if this is the one because Google doesn't really give you the correct answer, but it says it was a massacre.
The massacre, yep.
A war crime that involved lynching and killing 6 American people during World War II.
All right, good work, good work. All right, so this will be a unique story, an interesting story of many fighter pilots in the United States and how they're targeting some of these areas in Germany. And they were treated very poorly by a German town and townspeople in Russelsheim, which I'll talk about today. All right, so real quick, Operation Gamora, a little bit of a backstory before I give the lesson today and talk about what happened. But here are some pictures of Hanover and Hamburg all throughout Germany through these bombing runs that Great Britain was doing. As you can see, the incendiary bombs are lighting up the sky. Okay, this is all fire and fire bombing all throughout Germany in the major cities. Okay, over 60,000 civilians would be killed in these bombing runs. Okay, yeah, the Allied powers did their best to try to try to prevent as many deaths as possible, civilian deaths, by dropping leaflets, okay, papers saying, hey, there'll be bombing runs throughout this time. You're caught in a crossfire, you're caught in a crossfire. But just want to let you know, destroying many of these industrial areas. In many cases, the RAF was involved with this, Great Britain's Air Force, and the United States, okay, trying to submit Germany. Best way, like I said, to defeat an opposition is cut off their supplies and their production. And that's what their goal was, destroy as much as possible. It was unfortunate, but some saturation bombing happened. Okay, strategic bombing, like we know, targeting industrial areas and destroying political outposts, military outposts. But happens in warfare, where many civilians are caught in the crossfire as well. But here are some pictures of the destruction of many cities in Germany, especially Hamburg. Okay, and this was really all throughout the ending of the war. Okay, the United States, the Allied powers, Great Britain, they wanted to make sure and prevent Germany from producing these really advanced weaponry. And the best way to do it is constant bombing runs, as you can see here. Buildings literally lit up because of the incendiary bombing and the destruction laid. Okay, there's some other pictures I have. Oh, look at the destruction of the whole city in the background. Unbelievable. Dead bodies obviously laying on the ground of the constant bombing runs. And not only would they do it during the day, but at night. And we all kind of know why they would do it at night, to try to prevent any type of sight or anybody seeing them in the skies. But in a way, I guess you could say this was payback. Great Britain, the Royal Air Force, they're doing their best to try to get back at what Germany was doing all throughout the war, the start of the war anyway, with the Blitz. Okay, you guys remember talking about the Blitz? Yeah. All right. So with that being said, as the RAF is targeting Hamburg and Hanover and all of these areas all throughout Germany, the United States obviously doing the same thing with these bombing runs. And it was all because of the invasion of southern Italy, right? So since the Air Force is now capable of targeting Germany, the Allied powers have the ability, as we're moving in closer and closer onto Germany, we could target many of their industrial areas. And I'll post this up for you guys later. But with the Russelsheim Death March, this was a fighter group of 8 or 9 members. I believe it was 9. And they're targeting some of these cities in Germany, one of them being Hanover. Okay, and Hanover is real close to where Russelsheim is, alongside the Rhine River. Okay, the Rhine River is really close to the border of France and Germany. Okay, right up here, I'll show you on the map. It's real close to this Rhine River, right next to, obviously, where the border of France is. And with this mission, it was called, their plane was called the Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am, which is kind of like a song, I guess you could say. And they're targeting Hanover. And as they're doing a bombing run, they were shot down. Their plane was shot down. And as they crash landed, okay, I believe 1 person died in the crash landing. And 8 of the members were trying to seek refuge, try to escape. Obviously, if they're captured, they'll be placed in POW camps, prisoner of war. Okay, it was unfortunate, but 8 of them actually did get captured. Right, 8 members of this fighter group got captured, and they were being transported to one of the prison camps in Germany, more inward. And this happened in 1944. So already this, the D-Day invasion occurred. So there's many air bases in France already that the Allied powers are establishing, and we know in southern Italy as well, and moving up into more of northern Italy. So they could target many of these areas all throughout Germany. Okay, so as they were doing this, their plane was shot down, and they're actually captured by German soldiers, Nazi soldiers. And that's not where the mistreatment happened, believe it or not. The Nazi soldiers allowed them to sleep, gave them some sort of food and water, and they're transporting them by train to one of the prison camps. And because of the constant bombing, what do you think happened to these railroad tracks? They're destroyed, right? They're destroyed. They're trying to cut off any type of transportation, the Allied powers. So once they got up to this railroad close to Russelsheim, right along the Rhine River here, they were they had to get out of the train, obviously. They had to walk a distance to get to another, obviously, transport system, and that was to another train station. Okay. So they had to walk through this town of Russelsheim. Okay. Russelsheim is important because this was an area, and even today, a big car manufacturing area. Okay. So automobiles, obviously armored vehicles during the war, and the RAF was targeting Russelsheim. So Great Britain forces. It wasn't even the American pilots that were targeting this this industry. Okay. So constantly, day in, day out, Russelsheim was target because of their armored vehicles that they're creating, that they're pumping out. And many civilian people were killed, many German citizens that weren't even partaking in the war. Okay, their houses destroyed, their neighborhoods destroyed, their family members, friends, all killed in this action, in these bombing runs. All right. So the Nazi guards, the troops, were transporting these men, these 8 men, through this town, through this small, I guess you could say it's a city, through the city. And what do you think the people of Russelsheim were doing to the American troops as they were walking through? What do you think, Troy? Yeah, exactly, right? And in a way, I mean, obviously this is a really sad story, but the anger behind the German people, I wouldn't say it's justified, but obviously they're angered. Their whole town's destroyed, their neighborhood's destroyed, their family, their friends were killed in many of these bombings. And it's like, wait a minute, these are the people that ran, these bombing runs throughout this night, okay, that killed our friends, our family, destroyed our neighborhood and our town. So they're throwing bricks at these people, hitting them with hammers, with shovels, pushing them onto the ground, literally beating them, many of them to death, to a pulp, okay? And actually the Nazi soldier, one of them actually ran away. He was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. I can't really do anything about it. All right, these people are they're angry, obviously, and there's no stopping them. So actually one of the Nazi troops just kind of ran off. It's like, I can't take this. There's no way of stopping this city. And it's kind of justified to them, right? And it's sad, like I said, but many of their friends and family were destroyed. Their whole neighborhood was destroyed by these bombing runs. So one of the Nazi troops said, all right, enough, trying to break up many of these citizens that were targeting these soldiers as they were making their trip to the other transport, the other train. And he pulled out his revolver and shot 6 of them, okay? And he ran out of bullets. So there's 2 left. And one of them, like I said, was the man from Klingerstown that's some sort of relative to Mr. Dietrich. And once they were killed, these 6 men, okay, and constantly, these 2 men were beaten a little bit more after that Nazi soldier ran out of ammunition. They piled the bodies up, and even the 2 live ones, in a wagon, and they're trying to transport them through the city. And for some reason, after the deaths, after the Nazi soldier killed 6 of them, when they're transporting through the city, some of the citizens were like, all right, the townspeople, we're good. And then all of a sudden, after several minutes, after some time traveled, they picked it back up again. There's 2 more alive in the wagon that they're transporting these people, these 2 soldiers in, and they went back at it for more. So with that being said, what do you think the 2 soldiers did? They tried to play dead, right? They hid underneath the bodies of their actual men, their friends, their other fellow pilots. Okay, their fellow, like I said, friends. So actually play dead under the bodies of these their friends and their fellow soldiers. And I couldn't even imagine that. So as they're transporting, another bombing run came through. So as the citizens were coming back for round 2, coming back for more, okay, a bombing run came through, the sirens were going off in the city, and many of the people just ran for cover, okay, which allowed for some time for the 2 men that were surviving to push the bodies off of them, of their friends, of their fellow troops, and try to run for cover, try to run away, right? And which they did. They were heading out for 2 days, okay, close to the Rhine River. And like I said, they're trying to get closer and closer to France, obviously, but they're captured again. Oh my gosh, they're captured again. And they're sent to a prisoner of war camp until the ending of the war, which those 2 men actually survived. Okay, and one, like I said, relative to Mr. Dietrich, which I think is a pretty cool story. And with that being said, after World War II is over, through the Nuremberg trials with many of these German officials that were being tried for their war crimes. They actually went to the city, and really the whole city was faced with war crimes of what they did during this march. And the two men that survived didn't want to even tell the story. They didn't even want to talk about it. They didn't want to tell their families, tell their fellow soldiers or anybody about what happened at Russelsheim, because in a way they kind of understood it, obviously, but I couldn't imagine the post-traumatic stress afterwards. I couldn't imagine thinking about what happened during this death march. So afterwards, 5 men were trialed and hung, executed by military police in Germany after the war. And they actually, this article here, which I'm showing you, explains that. Here's actually a picture of one of the men being hung. And like I said, it's unfortunate. These townsmen literally just saw their whole town being destroyed by these bombing runs, and they thought this was justified. Obviously, it wasn't. Obviously, it wasn't. And this is the man from Clingerstown right here, William Adams. I guess he zoomed in right here. Okay, this lady is the daughter of the, I guess you say, the person leading the squadron. Okay, and yeah. Norman Rogers, that's it. Yeah. So her father is Norman Rogers, the person that was flying and the leader of that squadron. So I think it's a pretty cool story, like I said. And they actually do have a video of the execution, which I don't know why they would show that. But here are the bodies of the 6 men that were killed during the Russelsheim death march. Sad, sad stuff. All right, is there any questions on that? Like I said, I think it's a unique story, especially since it's local and it's very, very impactful. And like I said, there's many people all throughout our local areas that experienced war, especially World War II. Many of them obviously very old now. So it's important to hear their stories, but respect their stories, right? For, like I said, this story here especially, not many people knew about it. They wanted to try to hide it because of obviously PTSD and respect of the people that experienced what they experienced. All right, but I'll attach this article to the announcement. Like I said, it's an interesting story.